"22 years ago, Nintendo released what some would argue is not only the best Zelda game ever, but one of the greatest games of all time. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past stood as a pinnacle of 2D game design and paved the way for future installments, but as gaming moved into the third dimension, its legacy is somewhat obscured by the mists of time. Nintendo revisits the SNES classic in the form of a sequel on the 3DS, A Link Between Worlds. Set centuries after the events of A Link to the Past, this new quest could have relied on nostalgia and used its legacy as a crutch. Instead, A Link Between Worlds embraces its heritage and weaves it into a new world that's full of surprises. At times it feels like you're at home with the game, but just when you start to get comfortable, it hits you with something unexpected. This willingness to shake things up is something the Zelda franchise has needed for a long time now. As in A Link to the Past, you have to conquer 3 dungeons in Hyrule, the portion of the game that closely resembles the Light World, before moving on to 7 more dungeons in a realm called Lorule, the equivalent to the Dark World. Unlike in A Link to the Past though, once you've cleared a few initial challenges, you're free to explore the world and tackle subsequent dungeons in any order your heart desires. It's a freedom that hasn't been seen since the original Zelda. The open nature of Hyrule allows you to travel to just about any location very early in the game, although some areas require a unique tool before you can gain access. These items are tucked away in clever side objectives that you'll naturally come across during your travels. Rather than feeling like busy work, these minor quests contribute to your sense of discovery. Whereas Hyrule eases you into this more non-linear experience, Lorule throws you into the deep end. The way Lorule is sectioned off prevents you from accessing all of its zones directly, so you'll have to use portals to hop back and forth from one world to another. This makes getting across Lorule feel more like a giant, interconnected puzzle, brilliantly realizing something Skyward Sword tried and failed to accomplish. Complementing this shift is the manner in which you obtain items. In previous games, you'd find an immediately relevant item in every labyrinth. Here, players can access just about everything you might need within the first 30 minutes through A Link Between Worlds item shop. You can rent items at your leisure, or later purchase them for a significantly higher price. The system is almost perfect. You retain rented items until you fall in battle, at which point you'll need to trek back and rent them again. In the hands of a skilled or cautious player, it's entirely possible to make it without needing to purchase an item, but there are other incentives to shell out those extra rupees. You can upgrade purchased items by coming to the aid of a specific character. While some of the upgrades are marginal improvements, the enhanced functionality of others will make life much easier by allowing faster traversal and superior combat abilities. Rather than relying on excessive hand-holding, A Link Between Worlds encourages you to think for yourself. For the most part, you're left to your own devices to figure out a way to progress. This is most evident in the way you solve the game's puzzles. The puzzles in the game are really well done, and it's largely in part due to the developers breaking from the tradition of obtaining a specialized item within each dungeon. While you still rely on your inventory to overcome many obstacles, Link acquires the curious ability to turn into a painting early in the game, allowing him to shift into the second dimension and access previously unreachable areas. This is where A Link Between Worlds shines. You'll have to think creatively and utilize a combination of different tools and techniques to make headway. These are some of the best dungeons in a Zelda game with truly clever puzzles, but if you're stumped, you can always turn to optional in-game hints. You can either visit a fortune teller to get a clue as to your next destination, or enlist the aid of a hint ghost with your system's play coins to gain some insight. If you're seeking a greater challenge, the new Hero mode finally lives up to its billing by drastically raising the stakes in combat. The only downside is that you'll have to prove your mettle by beating the game first to unlock it. There are also a few lighter activities you can participate in for fun and for profit. Whether it's dodging cuckoos, playing Octorok baseball, or fighting through a gauntlet of enemies in the treacherous tower, there's no shortage of things to do in A Link Between Worlds. You might even net a more valuable prize like a piece of heart or a new item. There's also a Street Pass feature that lets you fight computer-controlled versions of other players that take the form of a Shadow Link invading your game. Accepting their challenge will transport you to a battle arena where you fight for a chance to claim their bounty. It's a fun diversion that has a lot of potential if Nintendo decides to expand the concept in the future. The game's visual style works well, even though character models tend to look goofy in the game's few cutscenes. The soundtrack, however, is one of its strongest assets, with new arrangements of classic Zelda tunes as well as original compositions. A Link Between Worlds is a rare accomplishment that recaptures the spirit of classic Zelda. It takes the series into new territory much like its SNES counterpart did 2 decades ago, and it might be the most significant revision of Zelda's structure since the landmark release of Ocarina of Time. For any doubters out there, it's time to put your reservations to rest. This is the best Zelda in a long time, and hopefully a sign of things to come.